You're listening to Kayak Flyer with your host, Sean. Tonight, we're brought to you by Tennessee Trailers, OutdoorAdventureTrailers.com. Simply the best way to get your kayak to and from the water. Bajuco Flats Fly Co. Simply the best custom-made fly rods on the market, always built to order just the way you want it. Find Bajuco Flats Fly Co. on Instagram and Facebook. StoneflyNets.com, made 100% in the great state of Arkansas with your choice of woods or burls. Stonefly Nets can even be customized for that favorite fisher person in your life. Check out StoneflyNets.com for details. CutthroatFurledLeaders.com, the only leaders that I fish with. Cutthroat Furled Leaders are excellent for saltwater, freshwater, trout, bass, you name it, you can catch it with a Cutthroat Furled Leader. Head to CutthroatFurledLeaders.com, promo code KAYAK to save 15%. And we are back, guys. Adam had to work tonight, so he couldn't make it. Gretchen and Al Beatty are back with us. Nice enough to come back on, and we're going to tie one of the flies they were talking about last time they were on the show. So if you're listening to the podcast, I'm sure you'll be able to understand everything they're going to describe. But feel free to jump over to our YouTube channel and watch the video there on YouTube so you can see exactly how this fly is tied. Welcome back, guys. How you been?
We've been good. Good
Busy.
to see you again. Yeah, we've been busy, but good to see you, Sean.
Good to see you guys. I know this is the summer of trips. I know a lot of people going on trips to go fishing this weekend, and especially this coming up weekend. I'm going to the White River. A couple of people I know are going to Colorado. And, you know, it's fall, terrestrials work. There's a lot of different things out there that they're working. It's probably one of the better times of the year, in my opinion, to be out on the water because there's such a diversity. So hopefully we'll be able to talk a little bit about that tonight, too.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, in fact, like you, we're on Wednesday. We're heading out on a fishing trip as well. So it's but it's to the Boise River, and unless you live in the area, you don't know anything about it anyway. But we plan on ending up at a ghost town up at the headwaters of the river. The place is called Atlanta, and it was an old mining town. It hasn't been mined in, I don't know, 100 years or a long time.
Who knows?
A long time.
Yeah.
Yeah, but anyhow, so we're gonna go ghost towning and fishing.
Well, there you go.
Yes.
Sounds like a good time.
But anyway, if you're amenable, we're ready to start on the pattern that we're going to share with you tonight. And the pattern does have a little bit of a story. We learned about the Wonder Wing style of tying in the early 90s at a fly fishing show in Holland. And like a lot of fly fishers around the world, we met a couple of guys from Holland, and in the course of our conversation, they asked, would you like to see our fly boxes? Well, of course. And they had some flies, and there was the most beautiful wings I've ever seen, and they were Wonder Wings. Well, there was one little problem we found with the Wonder Wing. The way they tied them, the wing was a little stiff, and if you had a light leader in a stiff wing, it tends to twist the leader up real bad. So we have a fix for that. And we're going to be showing that to you right now whenever you're ready to start, Sean.
Well, that's cool. Just, yeah, whenever you guys are ready, we're all interested to see and hear how this goes together.
You bet. Well, anyway, it's Kayak Flyer and BTs tonight, and we're going to be doing a Wonder Wing Drake. Now, we're going to start by looking at the materials. And I don't know, it's a stack of stuff. I don't know what else to tell you. We're using some hen cape hackle. And this probably doesn't mean a lot to you, all this stuff here. I'm going to take this one feather and move it over to my tying area. Now, here's a thing that we need to talk about, and we're going to spend a couple of seconds on it. It's called static guard. If you are a fly tyer in the Rocky Mountain West, where it's semi-desert country, a lot of static electricity to deal with. If you're having your hair stick in the stacker and you're not getting a good stack, it isn't bad hair, it's static guard. And we start all of our tying sessions off with a blast. And I just spray it all down, spray my hands and my tools. I'll set that aside right now. I've already done that before I started because I didn't want to get this all over my camera. We'll also be using a product that we manufacture called BT's Dubbing Wax. You'll see how that works. We got tailing material, hooks. I've got a couple of feathers already picked out, one for tail and one for hackle. I'll set them over at the vise. And the dubbing, and we manufacture the dubbing. It's called Touchatron. And with that, let's go over to the R camera and Gretchen, and take a look at the recipe. We'll see how those materials are going to go together. Now, there you can take a look at the recipe if you're interested. It tells you what hook you need, what the thread's going to be, tailing material. You're going to see that here in just a moment. The wings, are already made out of the hen hackle, and we're going to be using grizzly hackle, but this is a fly that we call a foundation fly, and that means it can be used for just about anything you want. You change the color and size. It can be a green drake in size 10, and it can be a Baetis in size, another smaller size. And if you want to go to the A camera, Gretchen. A camera? Yeah. And before we get into that, I would like to make a plug for our books, because the did the book display show up, Sean?
I've got a photo of you.
Oh, okay. Well, let's just go back to that. We'll just go back to that and leave that at that. And okay, the book display is right here. There we go. That's our books on Amazon. I forgot. It's been a while since we've run this program, and I forgot just where it was at. But anyway, this is in a book called Wonder Wings, and we'll get started with the S camera. You should see a picture of what we call a focus fly. Now, Sean, you're going to help me out here before we get into actually tying the fly. I'm going to zoom in close, and I want you to tell me if it looks crystal clear to you or not.
It looks good. It looks really good.
Awesome. Then all that focus fly does is tell me that we're in focus to go ahead and tie the pattern. So let me get that out of the way right now. By the way, a little tip to all you guys out there, I always put all my stuff into clips. It's easier to pick it up, especially when you're doing a program like we are tonight. Notice I've got my hook already in a clip. How many times have you tried to pick something up, especially if you're in a hurry and you just can't get the darn thing picked up? And I've been doing construction work all day or all the last couple of weeks. I don't have any fingernails left. They're gone. So picking something up off of a hard surface don't work, but that's why we use these clips. Actually, they look like hackle pliers. They are, but we bought these hackle pliers, and for some reason, they don't hold a hackle worth a darn. So we got lots of them here, but they hold hooks real well. Anyway, enough of that. Let's see. I had gray thread is what I want. Also wanted to show you something here on my bobbin. I've got a O-ring here, and you notice that I've got my thread tucked under that O-ring. Well, the purpose of that is to keep my bobbin from coming unthreaded. Gretchen and I, for years, traveled to fly fishing shows, and every time we would get to one and get ready to do a demonstration, all of our bobbins during the travel process had come unthreaded. Talk about it's frustrating. Well, anyway, that's what this is for. You just pull that O-ring off, you get them at the hardware store, slide it down over your bobbin, and there you are, ready to go tie. Pull the thread out, let's get started. Now we're actually going to do some tying here, and instead of jabbering away at you all, Gretchen and I use our thread to identify breakpoints in a fly. We want our wing to hang right at the 1/3 point. So that's 1/3 back from the hook. I should explain that. And now we'll advance it towards the back of the hook. The only time we do not put thread under a material is when we are doing a hackle fiber tail. In fact, I'll explain to you why. Let me put thread all the way to the back. And right there we go. Now, what happens too often is, whether you know it or not, there's a little bit of bulk there in that thread. Not much at all, but I'm going to pull off some of these gray hackle fibers off of this feather. Oh, by the way, before I pull them off, never pull the fibers away from the feather while holding the feather. Always hold the fibers in your fingers tight and pull the feather away. That way they won't misalign. They almost always misalign the other way. So we're just going to tie this on. Let me get back here a bit. Tie it on. And what happens if you have thread under your hackle fiber tail, invariably you're going to try to wrap right to the end of that thread base, and the last turn slips. You see how the tail is starting to go downhill? The next one will slip and go downhill. It may not even happen while you're tying it, but after you go over a bumpy gravel road and you open your fly box up, all your tails are heading downhill. So let's pull that out of here, and I'll unwind, and we'll get back to where we had originally planned on starting. All right, there we go. Get rid of that little tab of thread. Get some more hackle fibers out here.
And that's a really interesting tip there, how to pull them off and to not put down the thread, because I normally put a thread base all the way back on all my flies.
I do. We do on everything except hackle fiber tails and squirrel tail, depending on what we're doing with the squirrel tail.
If squirrel tail's so slick, it just
slick and hard. Yeah. Now you see how I'm holding that right there? Now I'll just pull the feather away, and what it does is these fingers right here are doing a good job of holding it nice and firm. If you go the other way, invariably as you pull away from the feather, your fingers are going to just relax a slight amount, and you're going to misalign the fibers. Okay, now I want you to notice that I'm dropping the hackle fibers down on the side of the hook next to me and allowing thread torque to place them up on top. Positions them right up there where I want them to be. And I want you to notice that I have a nice straight tail now. That's because it's coming straight off of the bare shank of the hook. Okay, now let me... I'll wrap forward now. Now we need to talk about the modification that Gretchen and I had to make to the wings. First off, the way the wings are tied in Europe is, first let me stop right here. First, we need to identify which part of the feather to use. You notice that the stem here is real thick right here, and it's right about here it starts to get a lot more slender. And that's where you want to use it, is at that point where it gets more slender. So let me get rid of that. Cut the waist off. Now, the way they tie the fly in Europe is they sweep the fibers back along the stem and tie it down, stem fibers and all. It makes a beautiful wing. Absolutely gorgeous. But you've got this stem going down through the wing, and anybody knows in casting, especially small flies with a stiff wing on light tippets, it twists up like a son of a gun. So what we want to do is we've developed a method of tying a looped wonder wing, just like I'm identifying here or showing here with this single feather. Now there's a formula, because it's obvious the wing on a size 18 is going to be a lot smaller and take less fibers than on a fly that's a size 8, which is what I'm tying as 10 right now. Well, the formula we use is, notice the stem from here to here with the fibers that I was playing with. Well, we want to use fibers swept back on a piece of stem about half the length of the hook shank. No more than 2/3. 2/3 is almost too much. About half the length of the hook shank. So I don't need all of these for this hook shank. And that's about half the length of the shank. As you can see, to make this wing, we would sweep those fibers back and tie them in place. Well, we need 2 wings, not 1, but it's easier to demonstrate this process with a single feather. So let me lay that aside. And I have a really handy tool here that you get at the craft store. It's called a clothespin, and it's from a dollhouse clothespin, because you notice it's a smaller clothespin than you normally use. Well, we use that to hold the 2 feathers together, and you want them opposing each other. See how they're kind of spreading away from each other? But we're going to use the same idea now, Sean. Oh, well, you're going to say something, Sean?
No, I was just agreeing with you. That's
okay. What we're going to do now is sweep all these fibers back. And remember, we want to be on a length of stem on both feathers, about half the length of the shank. So now you can see that I've got it pretty well divided there. So I'm going to sweep these back. And here's a problem. If you try to tie them on to the length that you want the wing to be, that twisting and tightening motion of the thread as it goes around is going to twist those fibers over each other. It's called thread torque, and we use it all the time to position materials, but this is one time you don't want that. So what we're going to do to counteract that is temporarily use the strength of the stem to stabilize those fibers, tie them in place real short, stem fibers and all, with 3 snug but not real tight wraps. Then I'm going to pull the wings out from under the thread to the length I want them to be.
You steep that card.
And
no animal is trying to get in the picture here. So.
Yeah, she's gotten to be quite a celebrity here of late. Okay, and that gives us an opportunity, and you can probably see, we'll get these wings straightened up here in a minute, but you can see right there that the stem is not tied down. Right. Okay, so now we'll just go ahead and bind those into place. Pull up the waist ends to trim them off. I want you to notice how I'm trimming that. I don't just come in and chop like this. I bring my scissors in from the offside and lay them flat along the hook shank so that I get a very severe cut, and it blends the excess or the larger amount of fibers in the wing into the smaller amount of fibers into the tail, making a nice taper to my underbody. And when you have a nice underbody, the overbody will be a lot better looking.
Just a comment at this point. Sometimes when you're on the river and or at the campsite and you need some flies really quick, we will just use the waist end of that feather as the tail. So
yeah.
As you saw when he was tying, there was some stuff sticking back there. Sometimes we just use that, but we don't.
And we call that fly the quick and easy, and it's actually in the Wonder Wing book. Yeah. But anyway, for right now, I'm going to stand those wings up. And while I was jabbering away there, Sean, I made the wings a little too short. We'll just live with it. That's all right. You all get the idea of how this goes together. Now, what we're going to do is let me pull this here so I can get a good look at it. And there's the wings.
Oh, nice.
Now, I like my wings to maybe be just a little bit more divided than that. So I'll just crisscross between them.
Right.
And that'll give you the look that we're looking for. Okay, now, let's see. Let me set that aside. Put that back in the clip so I can pick it up if I have to again. We've got our hackle and the dubbing. And the dubbing is what we're ready to put on right now. Now, this is the dubbing wax. And what we're going to do is just put that wax on the thread. And
do not put it on your finger. It's too sticky.
Yeah, good point. And another thing, I noticed that I'm putting the cap back on. Don't forget, because if you drop your dubbing wax in the waste bin, believe me, it's a mess. And I happen to always do it every time it happens. It's when I'm live on the internet. I don't know how that could possibly be, but it always does. You know the old Murphy's Law routine? Okay, Now we've got our dubbing right here, and we're going to apply this by touching it to the thread. You get a nice even application of your dubbing and a sparse application. This is a mayfly that we're trying to imitate, and I can tell you most people overdress their mayflies so much, and I haven't seen very many fat mayflies.
Yeah, and that touch technique is a really great technique to make sure that it is thin enough. I've used that a lot on smaller flies. It's a great technique.
Okay, now you notice that I'm
doing it, so the professional's doing it, so I'm going to sit here and tell them how great it is.
No, please continue on, Sean.
That dubbing he's using too has a little bit of Antron in it. So if you see a little sparkle, I don't think this light you probably
okay. All right, now I'm getting up here to where I'm going to tie on the the hackle, and I'm just going to do a single hackle. Again, I apologize to all your viewers. Those wings should be just a slight bit longer, but they are what they are right now.
Well, I think everybody understands.
Well, one of the things that I found is, after years of tying, I still have not gotten to be really good at tying with a camera sitting between me and the vise. It's just one of the things that it doesn't work worth a darn.
Yeah, I know. It's, there's guys writing books and, they've talked to me about, they'll tie 15 flies and with the camera ready, they're it's not working, but the first time they put everything away, it's great.
Yep, for sure. Okay, here we go now. We're gonna wrap our hackle, taking each subsequent turn closer to the front. Now I'm going to make a turn in front of those wings, and invariably on this side over here, there's a little spot that you miss, especially if you're tying hair wings. There'll be a little spot showing there, and I'll show you how to cover that up. We're going to go. Notice that I put one turn in front of the wings.
Mm-hmm.
Now the next turn goes behind the wings again, and now we'll continue our journey forward to the hook eye. And that took care of that little spot over there on the other side. And you'll never notice it. Never notice that you did what I did by going back and then forward again and back again. But if you don't do it, you'll notice that little spot over there. And if you ever enter fly tying contests and stuff like that, you'll get dinged for it.
And the fish just hate it.
Oh, God. Our fish in Idaho are so educated that they'll look up there and say, Al missed a turn, and he didn't put it back and forth like he was supposed to. And you know it's getting really deep here, Sean.
Yeah.
Okay, now we're up to the point of tying this thing off, and we need to talk about that. Tying off the fly, I cannot tell you the number of people I see tie a fly. It looks pretty darn good right up to this point. It looks really quite good. And here's how you screw it up. I'll tell it like it is. You're screwing it up. Is I've got that feather anchored with 2 turns of thread. I think to myself, darn, I don't want that to come apart. I better put some more on there. Turn number 3, number 7, 8, 9, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20. Well, those 20 turns will hold it. Oh, cut off the feather. Then they have to cover up the feather, and you end up with a good-looking fly and a big lopsided head. Well, I'm going to show you a trick that's going to win you a spot in contests. There's 2 turns holding that feather. What we're going to do now is dog leg. We call it jamming the dog leg. And what we're going to do is we're going to dog leg the feather. In other words, bend it back, bring our thread in front, and wrap a thread head that's a jam knot starting at the hook eye. I've got a hook that does not want to cooperate. There we go.
This also probably helps from covering up the eye too.
Yes, it very definitely from notice how it's kicked that hackle back.
Yeah,
it's been anchored now in 2 different directions, and now we're to the last thing. And again, in the place, but don't cut that off yet. It's time to do a whip finish. And before we do the whip finish, I want you to notice that my thread started right at the hook eye, and then each turn went further back as it pushed the feather back. Right. Well, for 40 years, I made whip finishes that I thought were good, but they weren't. And it's a long story, not worth getting into, but anyway, I discovered what the problem was, and we're going to share it with you right now. Okay, what's a bad whip finish? Well, I'm an expert at the darn things, quite frankly. As I said, I did them for 40 years. Here's how you start a bad whip finish. Notice the thread is hanging right at the hook eye. Almost everybody gets to that point. And then they go to the next step. They say, well, I'm going to do my whip finish. I'll lay the trap with my whip finish tool. And then they start to wrap from the eye of the hook, each turn going back until they get back, let's say 5 turns, and that's what's right there. And now they pull that up. And guess what happens? That strand that you think is going under those 5 turns goes over the top first,
right,
and then under them. And that's a bad whip. If you're using glue all the time on your head, it won't cause you any trouble. But there's the good whip. You start back on the hook eye. Make each turn a little bit further forward as you after laying your trap. And look what happens. They all disappear under, and it's a well-protected one. Now, here's the real world. You're going to end up at the front. Anyway, so we're going to go to plan B. It's hanging at the front. You're going to wrap back over and start back on the eye application, or the head application, if you will, and work your way forward. And that's just the way around it. And then you'll end up laying your trap and do the whole thing. But now let's get back to the fly. So that now you know what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to get my whip finish tool out here. And remember, I'm starting each subsequent turn. I'm starting back on the eye, and each subsequent turn comes forward. In fact, let me show it to you up close. Let's see here. Okay, let me get that over there. Okay. Can you see a real tight shot on it now, Sean?
Yep, we sure can.
Okay, good. We're going to lay our trap, and each subsequent turn gets closer to the front. I want you to notice that goes under. It doesn't go over the top.
Yep.
And that's your good
I've
way.
noticed and always wondered why I had the line over the top, the thread over the top.
Yeah. And now we're going to trim this off. And we've been doing this on our commercial flies for, I don't know, 30 years that we've been tying together. Nobody has ever noticed. I want you to notice how long I'm cutting that feather. In fact, I'm going to exaggerate the point. We always use maybe a 32nd of a piece of feather there. Cut it off. It just hides back there. And when you glue your fly, you drop your glue right in there. It goes back down around that little stub of feather sticking up. It'll never pull out. Your feather might break on a big old snaggletooth brown, which you really don't care about, but you're not going to pull out. You know how you tell when the hackle is pulled out or whether it's broken? When you pull your fly in, oh, the feather came loose. You look at it, you say, oh darn. Look at the end of the feather. If it's got a little hook on it, it pulled out. If it's straight, blunt, it broke off. Smile when it breaks off, frown when it doesn't.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
So what really isn't much of a presentation to you all, but we hope we shared a couple of ideas with you anyway.
Yeah, I know I learned some things just looking at that. The touch dubbing method, I know a lot of folks don't really get into that, and that's a really great method. And again, watching your whip finish, like I said, I've noticed when I've gone to glue stuff, I'm like, I wouldn't have thought that line of thread would have been coming across the whole body, but now start a little bit further back, it'll look a little bit better. And the going around the eyes in front and then coming back, that's another great tip. So I think you did a wonderful job there, and I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
But
Thank
people
you.
can come to your btsflyfishing.com and they can find your YouTube and your videos where you go through and you show some of these. And don't you also do some online lessons?
Yeah, we do a lot of online lessons. In fact, we've got one coming up in a couple weeks with Project Healing Waters, veterans organization in Omaha. And in fact, we're already negotiating with them to go on a nationwide, not nationwide travel. It's putting together a nationwide program for them over Zoom. And what we want to do is we'll get started with it, but we know a lot of really good fly tires and bring them into. Let's say every Monday night is a veterans night. So
Right.
you get together at a certain time on Monday night, and from anywhere in the world, as far as that's concerned, the veterans could get into it. Now, whether that's going to work out or not, well, right now it's a plan, and like plans, they have a way of changing.
Yeah.
In fact, you know what a career is, Sean? A career is what you end up doing after life gets in the way of your plans.
Exactly. Yeah, I know that full well. I know that full well.
We all. How many times have you gone to college and followed a course of study only to end up doing something totally different? Most
Yep.
people do. Now, once in a while, folks don't, but they do.
Yeah. It's very odd how life has a way of doing that where you're planning and you're heading one direction and you get thrown off and so it's really important to understand. I think I compare life and fishing a lot together because one day you may be headed to the river and something happens, you get steered off and you have one of the best fishing days that you've ever had in a place that maybe you hadn't planned on fishing that day.
Yeah,
So,
I had a fellow stop by the house a couple days ago, and he had just returned from the river where we're headed tomorrow, actually, or Wednesday, excuse me, Wednesday, and I'll share this with you because it's something that if you're having some trouble on the water. Let's say a certain mayfly is hatching. And boy, the fish are coming up and looking at your fly that's supposed to be a complete imitation of that. Change it just a little bit. As an example, um, back in the late 80s, when Crystal Flash first hit the market, those of us guiding on the Yellowstone River at the time, that's where I was guiding, we found, gosh, if we had a little bit of Crystal Flash in our woolly burgers, we were catching fish like crazy. We were showing the fish something he wanted to see, but a little bit different. And man, they'd go crazy on it. Well, that's what this guy was explaining to me. He says, I was trying to fish hopper patterns and I wasn't having any luck, but they would go for a tan hopper pattern when the ones on the river were really a yellowish gray. I said,
Yep.
oh, that's interesting. Show them something different. And I'll share another tip of mine. We live in Idaho. The Henry's Fork River is in Idaho, and we fish it pretty darn regular. Our number one go-to fly for the Henry's Fork River is a size 20 Royal Wolf. There's a whole bunch of mayflies on that river that are size 20,
Yeah.
but those fish have seen every doggone imitation there is to see. Show them
Right.
something just a little bit different.
Yep. I've got a similar experience with one of my flies for smallmouth fish. It's a crayfish pattern, and everywhere I fish, the crayfish are orange because the bottom of the rock is a orangish tannish color.
Sure.
If I throw black or green, I'll catch fish. But if I throw the same color and that burnt orange and rust as the floor of that creek, I'm not getting anything, even though that's the color that the actual crayfish are in that water.
Yeah,
It took me forever to figure that out.
absolutely. And there's the other end of the thing. I guided a father and son from Pennsylvania into Slough Creek in Yellowstone Park several years ago, and God, they said, I want to fish these long leaders in the match the hatch. I said, okay, great, we'll sure do that. And after about 6 hours of nothing, watching fish come up and look at his absolutely gorgeous fly, size 20 something or another, I said, would you like to catch some fish before we go home? Well, yeah, I sure would. So I put on a size 4 black zonker, and he was into fish the rest of the day, just boom, boom, boom.
Yeah.
Show him something different.
Yeah, that is great advice. Guys, I know we were going to have a short one tonight. We had talked about it. Is there anything else you want to cover with, your social medias or anything else, or your store? I mean, people can go to btsflyfishing.com and pick up some of the products you showed us tonight that you were using.
Yep, they sure can.
Is there anything?
We're also at Gretchen Al Beatty. We're a team, so we don't have our own individual Facebook sites. On Facebook, we're Gretchen Al Beatty, and we've got an announcement there for the Omaha thing, and we've got it. That's where we put all of our announcements for all of our Zoom sessions. So if anybody's interested, just pick us up as a friend, and then you'll be getting notifications of it.
Well, that's a great thing, and especially with a lot of new tires out there, or even advanced tires who, they're learning from a guy who's been doing it, guy and gal have been doing it for a long time. And, I even learned a couple of things tonight, and I've been tying for 15 years or so. So, figure that out, find out, learn from those guys that have done this before, and check them out and follow along with them. Guys, I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Sean. And the best to all, make sure you tell Adam, give him our best. We're sorry we missed him, and all the best to all your viewers out there as well.
Thank you very much. And guys, if you're listening to this on the audio, please go over and watch the YouTube video because it's going to be great where you can actually see Al tie the fly. All right, folks, we'll be back next week with another episode of Kayak Flyer.